Thank you, Patty. So Ethereum and blockchain technology is all about evolving our trust model. We, for millennia, have built systems that have essentially been defined by authorities, by monarchs and other kinds of authorities, and enforcement of those systems have also been the responsibility of top-down command and control systems. Often those situations were well run, sometimes a little bit capricious. We have become enlightened over time, and we have transitioned in many nations to elected officials that essentially run or define rule systems and implement rule systems, normally reasonably well, but also sometimes capriciously. We are moving to blockchain technology. We're moving to a world in which we're transitioning from subjective manual trust systems to automated guaranteed trust, guaranteed execution of human-defined rules. And that's an exciting principle that we're about to embark on. So the internet is awesome. It has transformed society, but in many ways, it's broken. So with respect to security, it was built in naive times, and security has essentially evolved as a patchwork. So blockchain will represent a sea change in the security of IT architectures. Essentially, on blockchain systems, every transaction against your infrastructure will be strongly cryptographically authenticated and granularly authorized for what you're supposed to do on those systems. There have been some security issues at the periphery of these systems, where the legacy system meets the decentralized world, and at the application layer, but the protocol layers have been remarkably secure over time. They've been protecting billions of dollars out in the open. The internet is awesome, but it's broken. It's broken because it wasn't built with a natively digital money construct, wasn't built with a natively digital identity construct. And so we've built a world of internet services that have turned out to be wonderful in so many ways, but they've outgrown the architecture of the internet and the web in which they're embedded. They have enabled, essentially because identity is broken, they've enabled exploitation of personal information. They've enabled exploitation of the human condition. Identity is essentially broken. We spray aspects of our identity onto the internet. It gets stored on corporate servers, monetized, and not adequately secured by corporations. Blockchain presents a new kind of infrastructure in which we can establish the root of our identity on a blockchain system. We can use legacy identity providers to provide attestations that that is, in fact, me. That blockchain-based identity is a citizen or has an account in good standing. It's a better identity for the developed world. In the developing world, it's even more important, where many people don't have financial relationships or identification. They can use their social context. They can establish their identity, can serve as single sign-on for lots of different applications, and they can use their social context to attest to the fact that they paid back a loan or they're an upstanding citizen in their community. With that newly found persistent portable identity and reputation, they can't really be taken away from them, even if they're forced out of their country with no possessions. They can essentially reach across the world, get a microloan, buy a piece of equipment, and bootstrap their enfranchisement in the decentralized digital economy. One example of that particular technology has just gone into production in Zug in Switzerland. It's enabling citizens to establish their own identity, access government services, and they just announced yesterday that they're enabling people to vote in plebiscites. So some experiments in decentralized governance. So the simplest way to view this technology is as a next-generation database system, because there are many different nodes that are all kept in sync. Everybody has access to the data and the programs. Everybody can verify that no subset of actors can maliciously affect the system. So that's a context that we've called vertical computing or automated trust, guaranteed trust systems. That puts us into a world either on the public blockchain or even in smaller private contexts where trust is essentially guaranteed, proper execution is guaranteed. So a corrupt CFO, a rogue system administrator, a hacker can't get into the system, change data in the database, and effectively break the trust model of that system. So with that sort of more trustworthy collaborative infrastructure with the higher IT security implications and the realization that all of that is implemented in a peer-to-peer architecture, a radically free market architecture with low barriers to entry. It's essentially permissionless on the public blockchain. We have a force for universal disintermediation. And I use the term universal just to be a little bit dramatic. But we will see industries disintermediated in the sense that big players may be removed from the situation, or their roles as intermediaries will be right-sized in terms of how much value they extract from a transaction flow. Ethereum and blockchain technology in general will enable content creators, service providers, resource providers to much more directly access their consumers. Instead of having an intermediary like in the music industry or in ride sharing or the financial industry extracting huge amounts of value in those ecosystems, there will be direct access, and again, intermediation will be right-sized. There'll still be intermediaries because intermediaries do add value, but they will be less able to engage in rent-seeking behavior because low barriers to entry will be able to create much better competition. So with respect to content creation, we and others are building infrastructure in the music industry. So our Ujo music platform is in beta. Artists can upload their content, and consumers and other artists can get licenses on it. All the flows of licenses and money happen in real time. There's no record industry in the middle there extracting 70% of the value. In the news industry, we just released a platform. It doesn't have all the blockchain dynamics yet, but it's called Civil. It is a platform for responsible journalism. It has a constitution. Lots of different topical and regionally focused newsrooms have their own constitutions. And if you are a professional journalist in one of those newsrooms and you start behaving badly, if your newsroom behaves badly, you can get ejected from the platform, essentially by the crowd. With respect to services, we are building blockchain-based systems that enable bounties to be put out to enable lots of people to help us do our work and help other projects on their way. We are building systems to enable resources to be accessed via these tokenized systems. So resources like decentralized data storage, decentralized bandwidth, decentralized heavy computation, decentralized sourcing of electricity, decentralized ownership of fractionalized real estate. Lots of these elements are moving us towards one of our biggest goals, which is building Web 3.0, the decentralized World Wide Web. So Web 1, images, text, hyperlinks, it had a significantly transformative effect on society. Web 2 totally transformed global society. It added e-commerce, interactivity, mobility, social, orders of magnitude more value creation. Web 3 is bringing natively digital money, a better identity construct, greater security, and it will look like a world of trusted transactions and automated agreements on blockchain networks like Ethereum, and there will certainly be others. It will require decentralized storage, decentralized bandwidth, decentralized heavy compute, proof of location, time stamping, et cetera, that's non-repudiable. This sort of infrastructure is going to be the fabric of the decentralized World Wide Web. So none of you have to worry. You'll still keep using the World Wide Web. You'll just be able to interact on the World Wide Web in much better, much healthier ways. So entities like Uber, Lyft, Airbnb are wonderful services. I use them all the time. And they have moved us towards this notion of a sharing economy. But actually, they are just resource aggregators. They are big intermediaries, big gorillas in the middle of transactions, absorbing a huge amount of value, and they deserve it. But there are ways to architect these kinds of systems, protocol-based open platforms, on which many different actors can interact, can perform different roles, and no actor in networks like that are overly in control or overly monetizing. So we are building many of these open platforms. Ethereum is essentially a protocol-based open platform on which you can build applications. Some of these applications can be protocol-based open platforms, like for the music industry, like for supply chain, like for ride sharing. Uber is a company that has big margins. They do tremendous things. They build navigation software. They figure out insurance. One can imagine a group of smart entrepreneurs and technologists getting together, building the same sort of infrastructure on Ethereum as smart contracts, as programs on the platform, getting a little bit of traction because they have very low margins. And they're comfortable with those low margins where Uber might not be. Once they have a little bit of traction, they can tokenize the platform. They can turn it into a networked business model and essentially sell ownership, governance of the platform to the resource providers and to the consumers, the drivers and the riders. And suddenly you have a whole lot of people that are incentivized to build more value, to use the infrastructure. And I think that's a potentially profoundly disruptive force. So that's going to happen in some industries. It won't necessarily happen in all, but over time, I think we're going to be moving to this more collaborative infrastructure. If you own a token that essentially represents some of the business logic, transactional logic on this platform, you can build businesses on the platform, analytics services, et cetera. If that platform starts to get well utilized, the demand for the token goes up, and everybody who uses that platform will benefit. One core value proposition of this technology, as I've hinted at already, is the ability for us to move away from building siloed walled garden infrastructure in our applications, in our businesses, in government systems, to treating collaborative infrastructure as the foundational atomic unit of IT systems. So we are moving towards building more fluid, more collaborative, more trustworthy systems so that sectors, industries, cross-industry systems, value chains like supply chains, we can all get together and work much more collaboratively. The Enterprise Ethereum Alliance is one organization. It's north of 500 members right now in industries like automotive and telecommunications, identity, legal, healthcare, advertising technology, a whole bunch more. This is a place where companies are interested in using Ethereum or have been using Ethereum for quite a while. They are getting together, they're defining specifications, they're building shared infrastructure for better systems. So it looks like I'm out of time, so let me leave it there. Thank you very much.